We have 6 dams in the city, but in actual fact, 4 are the dams that supply water to the city of Bulawayo. Chavez and Upper Nema are your battery banks. We only use them, especially Upper Nema, in a crisis. You discount that. Chavez is augmenting Zingwane dam. So in actual essence, you have 4 active live dams in this city that give you water. Of those 4 dams, the dam that is very critical for this city to survive is Zingwane dam. If Zingwane dam dries up, that's why we are in these problems. The issue of risk that one of my colleagues is referring to is a good subject. Let me delve deeper into that. We are actually in the risk that is fearing is not a risk compared to the risk as not having water in our taps in the next 3, 4, 5 years. We are tiptoeing on the brink of collapse. People should be awake to that risk. In the next 5 years, you have water once a month here if we don't do anything today.
The man who becomes Lobengula, he sets up his capital at Old Bulawayo there on the Criterion Road, or Bulawayo, and he first names that capital Gibukeo. I got the click wrong, apologies, but that is what the capital was first called. It refers back to a capital in that Mzilikazi had, and in turn back to KwaZulu-Natal. But he had divisions, and there was a civil war, and he has to deal particularly with Nduna Masuku and others up there towards Inyati Way. They were the chief antagonists. And so there is a little bit of a bloody battle, and the prince comes out victorious, and he comes back and he renames his capital Bulawayo. Now that isn't, as it is usually erroneously mentioned in tourist literature, the place of killing. The ko mean it's possessive. It means the place of he who has been killed, the place of he who has been injured, and that's referring to the king's own pain caused by this civil war. So the king then reigns from that settlement, and he reigns there until 1881. And at that stage, Bulawayo, that side, he decides to abandon it. Now this is a quite common development in traditional Nguni kings' settlements. They occupy it for about 10 years and then they move on. That's because they say that it has become polluted, physical pollution. We're not dealing with flush toilets or running water. That's one thing. The soil is tired. So in 1881, the king gives orders to burn that capital, and he relocates to a new Bulawayo. The same name is transferred to a low ridge in northern modern Bulawayo called Nhlabatini. And Nhlabatini is where State House is today. When they built State House, they built it on the remains of the late king's home, the royal homestead. It is the main point of contact between different groups from 1881 until the king flees and burns his capital, when we get the arrival of the various British and British South Africa Company forces. They actually come in, they invade his territory, and we can use the word invasion because Matabeleland, the king's territory, was a recognized state by the British authorities. So it wasn't just empty land, from a legal point of view, they were literally invading a sovereign country. Then it leads me on to this place that you have been celebrating, Hillside Dams. This particular area The king's residence is, well, we are a little bit out of the way, but if you go to the top dam, the upper dam, and you stand on the dam wall and you look to the right, there's a long ridge of stones, which, if you get close to them, they're red, but in the sun, especially at this time of the day, those rocks are weathered and they look white. White stones, Machanslope. The Machanslope, the origins of the Machanslope. The name has been given to this river. The dams are finished in 1887 and they start to fill. However, 1898 was a wet year. And because it was wet, they had they say 200, equivalent to 220 millimeter storm. They had one deluge of a storm, and down came a flood. Now, if we occasionally get them here in Bulawayo, we haven't had one for a few years, but I've seen that thing, a roaring tide. I've seen waterfalls up there and water on the front lawn almost up to the Boma restaurant. So when it does flow, it can flow viciously. And what basically it did, it wiped out the two top dams. They had partially finished, they hadn't quite been ready, and it took out those two top dams, and but the bottom dam survived. And so the lower dam is in fact the original dam, and they then had to rebuild the dams up here, but instead of making two, they made a bigger one, which is the upper dam today. So the upper dam today, it was built in 1898 after the flood, and then it was raised, so it was a little lower, but it was raised in 1912 to what we see today. So this was Bulawayo Metropolitan's water supply. If you didn't use wells or the Bulawayo Spruit, that's the other side that served what is today called Mokokoba, or this thing where it goes past the trade fair, then you actually paid for water coming from big reservoirs around the power station, which is why the power station was built there, because you need water for power. And that was our water supply until 1928, when this was proving unreliable. It's done exactly what you see here. It's dry. And so they needed other water. They tried boreholes. They drilled a whole lot of boreholes sort of in the area of what we call today Glengarry. As you just leave town and you pass suburbs and Kumalo, Glengarry is a little suburb. There's a petrol station there. I think that's what most people know. And they drilled a whole lot of boreholes to take water to the city. So they used this dam until 1928, when they built a dam on the Kami River, which is on the other side of town. A much bigger dam, much bigger catchment, so it did collect more water. These dams were only decommissioned in 1950. So in other words, they still supplied water, but from 28 to 50, it was mainly for the houses in this area. They had already been started building houses, and a lot of people had private pumps that took water out to their houses, and we can see where the old pumps were today. In 1950, they decided to change the use, and they made it into a recreational park. And it was a park made to commemorate a youngster who died in World War II. He used to spend all his time here when he was young looking at birds, so the council named it after him. And it was set out as a park. And the dams were very popular. And I'm afraid a lot of older people say, oh, in the old days they never dried. That's because in the old days, Bulawayo had surplus water and there was recycled water. In the old days, Bulawayo used to take its sewage water and partially recycle it and then send it to all the parks. Centenary Park, Nketa Park, hillside dams, and that's how they kept the lawns all green and pretty. And in the case of hillside dams, they used to put water in to keep it topped up. So everybody who says, when I was young there was always water, that's because it was being topped up.
Besinenhlupho zamanzi ngoba alokuhamba iviki yonke and abantu basuka bethwala enzima sokubona ugoge abahlala eduzane sehambe bethwele amapheyili kunazo siba yinto enzima amanzi empompini atholakala ukuthi sigeze kwesisikhathi anje suka sithwala enzima ukuthi sinathe so hayi impilo esiphila hayi ayikho right so hayi siyafisa nje mangaba lo tshintshe elizweni anje sikwazi ukuthi sithole amanzi njengabanye ngoba into le isisihlupho. It's been a long time since we faced this. And we don't know how long the situation is going to stay, but we're facing a very big problem. Because children in school, after when they come back from school, they must go and collect water. But they must read their books, they'll be delaying their time. When they're coming back from work, you should go and collect water, that you'll be delaying your time. So this life is not fair.
Amapipe amaningi abenjani abedubukile abantu bathatha amanzi ngapi somewhere lapho yabe kudubuke khona ini ipipe khona lapho bathatha khona amanzi bari ipipe iphuma amanzi bari empompini akula asikwazi indawo.
And the main problem is that the water is not clean. It's coming from underground and from the pipes, but we drink it because we have no choice. So we have higher chances of having cholera, diarrhea, because children will be playing around the water and the water is not clean and we drink the same water. So it's a problem, we really need water.
Council must battle amanzi kufanele isconsulte that isinjani isitshele khona ukuthi amadamu what isitshele le reason why phezulu emapayipini kunjani kulika bari kuphuma amanzi emapayipini ngaphi engafiki ezindlini.
Because as I'm sitting like Magwekwe, they can go like for 3 months without water and they'll be drinking the dirty water from those broken tanks, so that's not a good thing.
The physical need of raw water from the financial accountability. It's very important. Irrespective of whether we have an authority or not, this past season has demonstrated that we need glass block in terms of the need for raw water. Tied into that is what we refer to non-revenue water. We have an unacceptably high level of non-revenue water, water that we can't account for, which through bursts and people taking water, and that has to be tackled as well. So it's important to separate that physical requirement to improve raw water sources and to reduce that non-revenue. That's one separate issue. Has to be dealt with whether you have an authority or not. If you look at water revenues, if you study water revenues over the last 10, 20 years, I've used the word dissipated. What I mean by that is that water revenues have come in and they have been used for all manner of other expenditure other than maintenance of our pipelines and the construction of new dams and new pump stations. That has to end. Coming to your point, water is the most important service that any city has to deliver to residents. More important than anything else. Without water, we die. And for that reason alone, it is critically important that through some change to structures, that you ring-fence water revenues. You ensure that they come in and they are not spent on a whole range of other issues, and that they are accounted for properly through an efficient organization.
Iproblem esihlangana ngayo ngamanzi ukuthi amanzi ayahlupha ngapha emalokishini. Aware from phakathi kweviki abengekho abakhona nge-Friday phakathi kweviki lapho ama-problems esihlangana lawo ukuthi amanzi yinto esiyisebenzisa kakhulu phakathi kweviki njalo iyanideka from ukuklinela ama-toilets, so isikhathi esiningi sispenda sesiyangaphi esibhoraneni. Ngale sithona kuthona sokule line and amanzi akhona abe sephuma kancane nje sokuyisiphithiphithi khona lesibhoraneni kodwa ale too much salt, so awasebenziseki, but i-tap water lapho esithola khona from Friday to Sunday, but isikhathi esincane khona vele ukuthi ngamanzi kumbe ngakusenza i-weekend engabi khona but ebe khona phakathi kweviki. So ehluphe futhi abantwana i-toilet vele amanzi ayafunakala. Into esabe siyifuna thina njengabantu ukuthi abangapha emalokishini indawo ngendawo ikwanise ukunikeza isibhorane sibe seduze, singabi ngabantu abaningi futhi esibhoraneni esi-1. We discover ukuthi lapha thina eNyulo Bengola esethu isibhorane lesi safa, so siyakukhale esingangale kwenjuke. So siyafuna ukuthi esethu lathi sibe lesethu, into lezi ngayikhalela thina ebantwini abakhulu kakhulu.
Ngugugumanyule ngihlale eNyulo Bengola, silodubo lwamanzi. Amanzi asithwalisa izimo. Lapho esikha khona amanzi isibhorane sakhona siphuma manzi. Aphuma kancane, so siyandelwa ngabantu isibhorane lesi esikha kiso and sisendaweni embi emasiwejini. Amanzi akhona anatheki, noma uflasha ngawo uyawuphongwezi. Isicelo singaba laso, isicelo ukuthi i-city council ingasenzela i-jojo tank kungene besilethela ibhawuza phakathi kweviki, ngoba amanzi abuya nge-Friday lapho ntambama ngama-7. Thina ogogo sabe singasakwanisi ukuthi uvuke ebusuku siyakhelela amanzi, kodwa siyavuka sikhelele ebuye ngama-Friday. Kwesikhathi ehamba ngeSaturday, kwesikhathi ahamba ngeSunday, aze ebuya futhi nge-Friday futhi. Kuyabe kunzima ukuthi siphile njani. Besicela ukuthi i-city council ingasinika uncedo, isibonele ukuthi singayenza njani. Kumbe besigebhele isibhorane lesane silejojo tank kwenye indawo, hayi laphana sikhona amanzi akhona anatheki, sibila munyu noma ukugeza vele ngokuthi ugeze ngawo abe nquma.
We have the experience of Zingwane that we decommissioned in November 2023, and the whole year in 2024 we then had no water. So meaning that yield is already what? Reduced when we talk of saying in 2024 we were not counting on the yield from Zingwane. We came to October, we decommissioned Amanzi, meaning that we were also no longer counting on the yield from Zingwane. The proposed Bokoma glass dam, in terms of capacity, it has a capacity of 129 million cubic meters, meaning that if this dam is built, it will be the second biggest after our in-season dam, which has a capacity of 173 million. And then in terms of the amount of water that we can get from that dam on a daily basis, we're looking at 68 megaliters. One might already ask, why does it have a smaller capacity but give us more water? It is because from our existing in-season big dam, we are gravitating water. But from this proposed scheme, there will be pumping involved of the pumping of the water from the Bokoma glass dam to our existing NEMA water treatment works. So I just wanted to at least give you an overview and appreciation of our present sources and the proposed introduction of the Bokoma glass dam. And then maybe when we come to where exactly will this dam be located, it's in Amanzi catchment. You see there our existing sources, they are more upstream of the catchment. When you see the proposed location of glass dam, it's a little bit downstream in the existing Amanzi catchment. So in this particular instance, we have Zinwa working with Glass Dam Company, being responsible for the construction of this dam. Us as City of Bulawayo, we are the proposed user of the water from the dam.
My name is Ture, church leader. From a humanitarian perspective, looking at this proposal on the dam, would we still be on target vis-a-vis seeing that already maybe the residents are struggling when it comes to water bills, payments. And the other question is, do we really need another dam? Is there no way where we can work on our existing dams, sanitation issues, to increase the capacity, so to speak, so that when we have rain, then we have more water in our dams, rather than looking at adding another dam on already existing dams. Thank you.
But from a humanitarian point of view, in terms of affordability and options, if you say it's too much, you either, for now, we have nowhere else to get water. You can stay as it is, where you get water once a week, or and buy it from houses which you don't guarantee their quality, from whoever takes a bowl and comes themselves to you at a more expensive price than the $1.38 per kilometer. Or you take this $1.38 per kilometer. I think that is our choice. Nothing or this one. For now, this is what we have. Our alternative is to dig your own holes, buy from these water vendors who are selling to us, I think $5,000 per time. I'm at $30 or something like that. Yeah. So that is your option. Because from our current dams, we do not have raw water, which brings me to the second question about whether we need another water source or we can improve on our current water sources and deal with siltation and other things and improve the areas. I think the yields that we have there of our dams are the design yields. And if you add those yields as per design, not what we are getting today, they are not enough for this city's requirement. And you cannot improve the dam beyond its design. We have given you the design things per day. So the current dams, whether we are getting the best that we can or not, even if we got the best, they are no longer enough for the city. The city has grown beyond the dams. Because like we say, we last started the challenge in 1994. And it's beyond. Even if all of them were performing at 100%, the water will not be enough for the city. So I'm not saying, I'm trivializing the preservation of the current sources and making sure that there is no siltation, which we try to make sure. Umzingwane, when it was decommissioned, we did take residents to Umzingwane to see for themselves if there was siltation. And I think it was evident that you could see the river flow and there was no siltation. There was simply no water in Umzingwane Dam. So even at full capacity, the dams are not enough. So the long and short of it is, yes, we need another water source. Whether it's gas or any other water source, but we do need another water source.
This city needs water. And the question in this house we should actually be answering is, where are we going to get water? If you are going to give us an answer, the team from City of Bulawayo, that if I'm coming out of here, I need to have an answer that tomorrow, if I sit in my office, I need to come up with a solution that you have given me, which is practical, to give you water every 24 hours. I would need that solution. That's what we want.
I'm an academic and a researcher specializing in water and sanitation. I've done some work on Bulawayo water supply as part of my research. I'm also a resident of Bulawayo, and like every other resident, I'm concerned about the water problems that Bulawayo is facing. And I would like to give an insight on what I think could be the solutions long-term solutions to this problem that Bulawayo is having. In Bulawayo, we have to work with the adage that you cannot put all your eggs in one basket. So that means that Bulawayo cannot concentrate on one source of water. When I'm saying sources of water, I'm talking about surface water, groundwater. So yes, it's good that we are building other dams like the Gwaishangani, and now we also have the Bopoma glass block dam. Those are good initiatives, but we need to also think about the other sources like groundwater. Currently we have Nyamandlovu. Nyamandlovu has not been, as an aquifer system, has not been properly or adequately exploited. We could actually go further and have more boreholes so that we can also tap into the groundwater resource, because that aquifer is actually quite extensive and we could actually get more water out of it. We also have groundwater sources that have been sited south of the city. Those need to be investigated and also tapped into so that we have a solid system of water supply. Another source that has not been tapped is the rainwater. When Bulawayo receives rain events or storm events, I think all those that drive in Bulawayo, even those that walk in Bulawayo, especially in the city center, will attest to the floods that occur on the roads. That is a potential source of water that could actually be harvested. You find that there are countries like Japan who have tapped into such sources of water, mostly because they were trying to prevent flooding. So we can actually kill two birds with one stone. We prevent flooding, and we also then accumulate water that we can later on use for other uses. So as far as I'm concerned, there are three sources that Bulawayo can bench its water supply on: groundwater sources, surface water sources, as well as the rainwater. And the rainwater can actually be harvested citywide, and also residents can be encouraged to harvest water from their rooftops for other uses in the home. Again, that will help give people a sense of water security, that we always have water for our use, for our needs, which is something that we don't have at the moment. So this is my input to the Bulawayo water supply situation, that if we invest in all three of these sources and we tap into them, we'll be able to maximize the water supply and also guarantee the water security in the city.
My name's Tim Cherry, and I've been a resident in and around Bulawayo since early 1963. I have noticed over the years that this part of the country has been affected by climate change. Whether it's just a cycle or whether it's a permanent thing, I don't know, but certainly the years seem to have got drier and hotter. And of course, I don't recall in the 60s or 70s Bulawayo having water problems. Certainly of late, being a resident, I have noticed ever increasing water cuts, a lot of unfortunate leaks that remain unfixed for weeks or even months on end, but water rationing and serious water problems for many of the residents, both in the western areas and in the eastern lower density areas. Well, I think like anybody, I support a number of people at home, and we are lucky in that we have a well which has only ever dried up, I think, once in the last 40 years. It gives a reasonable flow, and we do help out our neighbours who are subject to fairly long periods without water. But I think the thought of having a family with kids at school, members going to work early in the morning, and having to depend on either bottled water to drink, which is actually quite expensive, or having to
cart water from a communal borehole or somewhere, it must be absolutely horrendous. One doesn't mind doing it if you're camping for a week or two, but to go weeks on end, or sometimes months on end, without water must be pretty hideous to live a life which we should be able to do in this country, which is pretty wealthy and fairly well run otherwise. I've got a couple of friends, both in the mining and engineering industry, who've come up with a plan, and I've been assisting them to some extent with letter writing and getting the act together, so to speak, as one of the possible remedies of the water problem in Bulawayo. I know there's 2 other or even 3 other schemes. One is the Gwai-Shangani Dam that, quite frankly, with respect to those involved, seems to have entirely run out of steam. The Nyamantlova Aquifer, which needs a lot of attention with replacing pumps and so forth. The Glass Block Dam, Bapoma Dam, I think it's going to be called. And the scheme that my friends have been in advanced is entirely a novel one, and that is simply the main dam in Bulawayo is in Caesar Dam, formerly called Mayfair and at one time called Cunningham. It's still often referred to as Mayfair Dam. Now that dam is I think it's 23 kilometres long when it's full. It's a huge dam, and it holds, when full, almost the same amount of water as all the other dams put together. Excluding the Mchibezi, from which I understand due to pumping problems we're not actually able to take any water from. And the scheme is to dig a tunnel. It'd be about 3 metres by 4 metres for 8 kilometres from that dam to the holding dam in Nyankuni Dam, and there would be, in addition, a canal of about 2 kilometres or so. Now, the reason why this is a good scheme is because in Caesar Dam is 30 metres higher than in Nyankuni Dam. And of course, we all know that water flows downhill, so that if there was sufficient water in Caesar, it would gravitate down to the existing pump below in Nyankuni Dam. It could also be a T-junction, could fill in Nyankuni Dam in less than a month, if necessary. The pipeline between Mayfair and Caesar Dam to the dam in Nyankuni, the tunnel and canal would be 10 kilometres long at an estimated cost of 20 million. The existing pipeline, if I recall correctly, is 40 kilometres. It contours round, goes south and then goes northwest. It is 40 kilometres long, and the estimated cost there is something like $39 or $40 million. There is a pipeline already, but I'm advised that it's relatively ineffective because it has been vandalised, it needs maintenance, and having looked at it, it's only about 3 foot, or a metre in diameter. And to dualise that would, as I say, I think it costs the best part of $40 million. Sorry, I think I said 1,000. $40 million as against the $20 million for the tunnel, if it is indeed viable. Once constructed, the flow would be completely free. There'd be no pumping at all the way from there to the existing pump station at below Nema Dam. The other proposal is, of course, the new dam near Philabuzi, Glass Block Dam. There's already been some work there. I've been down to just have a look as a matter of curiosity. Of course, any dam, and a dam of that size and nature, would be a massive benefit to the country and particularly to the locals where agriculture, fishing and all sorts of other industry would be encouraged, and of course to the present downstream users of the Umzingwani River, without detracting from the benefit, the potential benefit of the dam. My reservations are, of course, the Umzingwani hasn't actually flowed effectively for many years. For the last 3 years, it has been decommissioned for some of the time, having been 2.9 or 4.5% full. It's got a fair amount of mining upstream of the existing dam. And although it's a very, very large dam, I don't know when it was last full, but it was certainly many years ago. Of course, below that dam, there are a number of smaller rivers that would go into the Umzingwani above the proposed dam. So there would be some inflow, but having checked it a couple of weeks ago, there seems to have been very little or no flow this year into the dam. So it may be a very long-term wait until the dam would actually be sufficiently full. And of course, the Water Act dictates that you can't just dam a river up and take all the water. You've got to allow an outflow to the downstream riparian users, Collinborse, West Nick, and a huge amount of people downstream depend on it. So whilst long term it could be a wonderful scheme, I think short or medium term it's actually not as effective as a tunnel would be, because a tunnel, the water is there already. The dam is still pretty full, even now at the end of this rainy season, and the water is waiting to be harvested. I believe Bulawayo is entitled to take 80% of the water from that dam. So weighing up the two schemes, each have their advantages, but to my mind, as a layman, and don't forget this is not my idea, it's the idea of my friends, it would seem to be a more viable, be a long-term solution, but it could be put into effect in a very much shorter time than building a dam which is 70 or 80 kilometres from Bulawayo, 600 or 800 feet lower than Bulawayo, and would have to be pumped up by non-existent electricity all that way up to the city. Whereas this one would gravitate to where we want it, and where the infrastructure is already in place.
And my short answer to that is that we need both. We are currently working on improving the alignment of the pipeline that goes from Insiza Dam to Nlema. Just to explain some of the history behind that, when Insiza was first built in 1975, it was 1/3 the size it is today. And the pipeline was built to deliver from a dam which is 1/3 the size it is today. When the gates of Insiza were heightened in the 1990s, it trebled the size of Insiza Dam, but at the same time the size of the pipeline was not improved. Now there are a couple of proposals. There is the one proposal to duplicate the pipeline from Insiza to Nlema, but the proposal which is on the ground and has in fact been approved is that we improve the alignment of the pipeline, which will greatly increase the capacity of the existing pipeline. There is another proposal, and that is the proposal to construct an underground pipeline from Insiza to Inyankuni Dam, which has a lower altitude to Insiza. And that certainly is something that I'm aware of and we have looked at. But the problem with that proposal is that it assumes that Insiza Dam is full and that there is excess water capacity. The problem that we face at Insiza is that because of excessive gold panning, which is taking place in the Insiza catchment area, is that Insiza Dam has not spilled for some considerable period of time. And even after the substantial rains that we had this past season, it is still only sitting at about 50% full. And for the Inyankuni project to work, it needs for that catchment area to be rehabilitated, for illegal gold mining to stop. And if that happens and Incisa spills again, then yes, certainly that is a proposal. But the reason we're looking at glass block is because glass block has a completely separate catchment area to Incisa and all the other dams. In fact, it has the second largest catchment area of all our dams after Incisa. It also requires the construction of a 31-kilometer pipeline, which is not that much longer than the gravity-fed pipeline proposed from Incisa. But the bottom line is that by building a pipeline from Incisa to Inyankuni, one doesn't increase the amount of raw water available at present, which is precisely what glass block does. So our strategy is build glass block so that we increase the catchment capacity of our dams, and at the same time improve the capacity of the existing pipeline from Incisa to Nema Dam. In future, if money allows, then yes, it would be useful to construct the pipeline from Incisa to Inyankuni Dam. But I need to stress that if we constructed that pipeline now, it wouldn't deliver any water because of the low capacity, the low level of Incisa. So it only makes any rational sense to construct the pipeline from Incisa to Inyankuni if we tackle the problem of illegal mining in the Incisa catchment area, so that we fill that dam, which in turn would give it that extra capacity to deliver water to Inyankuni.
My name is Mazwangendaba, and today I'm here in Phumula East in Bulawayo, and this is the plight for the people of Bulawayo. It's been a month and a week without running water in our homes. As you can see right behind me, this is a queue. People are looking for water. And the sad part is that this water is unhygienic. The water is from a sewer pipe. So you can imagine the disaster that is looming. Cholera and related diseases. Ladies and gentlemen, there are people that we voted for in Parliament. These people are nowhere to be found to assist the people. They are not in solidarity with our suffering. They are only seen during election times, and after that, you only see them in their flashy cars passing by. No help, nothing. Now, it's 45 years after independence. In a few weeks' time, we'll be celebrating independence, and this is our plight. Can you imagine 45 years later, people don't have running water in their homes? Mr. President, this is how people are living in the city. People are suffering. Dear Coltart, this is how we are living as Phumula residents. We are using sewage water. There are no pausers. There is no contingency plan. Would you please reach out to Phumula people? Please make sure that the government avails funds so that we get water in our homes. As you can see, this is, see.
And there are multifaceted efforts taking place. The first is to improve the existing delivery system. We've recently installed new pumps at Mzingwane and Inyankuni dams, and there are proposals to improve the alignment of the pipelines from Nchabez to Mzingwane and also from Incisa to Nema, which will increase the amount of water we can draw from Nchabezi and Incisa dams. So tied into that, of course, is the continual maintenance of the existing water delivery network within the city, which is way beyond its economic life. The major programs going forward are to construct glass block dam, which was first proposed in 1988. And we are at an advanced stage of reaching agreement with the consortium, and we have already reached agreement with government that dam be built. That dam will have a major impact on the delivery of water because it has a capacity to deliver alone over 50 megalitres of water per day. Our current water demand is 165 megalitres of water per day, so you will see from that it will have an impact. And then, of course, there is Bulawayo Dam being constructed by government. We don't see that as a short to medium term solution because of the distance that we have to cover to deliver the water from that dam to the city. It will require the construction of a 257-kilometre pipeline up ahead of 600 metres. And that, of course, is very expensive. It is going to cost hundreds of millions of dollars to construct that pipeline and the pump stations along the way. And, of course, there needs to be the electrical capacity to power those pumps. And so a lot of work needs to be done in that regard. But that is our long-term plan. But in terms of the city's projections, if Glass Block Dam is built, that will guarantee adequate water supplies to the city until 2040. And if Bulawayo is completed and the pipeline is completed by 2040, that will guarantee water supplies for the decades thereafter.
Siyamthakazelela kulokho asenzele khona thina izakhamizi senze into yakhe yonke wasiphama njengezakhamizi wasihlonipha. Emveni kwalokho uloyisa ukwenza idamu elethu. Idamu lethu sina siyalifuna kakhulu, siyalifuna okumangalisayo ngoba amanzi siloyisa amanzi aye koBulawayo singakhangelelanga iBulawayo yodwa ngokuya kwesikhathi ayeza khona lapha eFlabhosi. Singathaba kakhulu esibhedlela sethu ukuthi amanzi siwathole, singathaba kakhulu esigaba sethu sibonakale senzakale saze sathumela amanzi ngoBulawayo. Hayi thina siyamthaba uNkotha asenzele khona ngoba lathi sinikele amanzi njengezakhamizi wasihlonipha, watsho njalo futhi wathi ngiyalihlonipha uthi ngizokwakha endaweni yenu kodwa niloyisa ukuthi siphathane kuhle madoda lami ngiliphathe kuhle. Siyabonga.
Mina ngumaphosa Mrs. Khumalo. Siyabonga ukufika kwaGoda Jacob indawo. Sasithika amanzi kajana kodwa kade sesilamanzi. Amasola sifakele khona apha konke sesidakho. Le damu siyasithakazelela kakhulu ngale ngakhiwa. Ngoba isifuyo sasisilamanzi. Lathi singancedakala ngase silima kumbe singaba lama irrigation sizincede lathi sincedisele abantwana bethu ukuthi baye esikolo. Konke konke siyakuthakazelela kakhulu. Sabonga kakhulu ukufika kwaGoda ukuthi ngawo kuyavuma phumelele idamu lakhe.